The corner office on the 50th floor of Thompson Industries hadn't changed much in 40 years. The same mahogany desk, the same leather chair, the same view of the city skyline I'd watched grow from modest beginnings into a forest of glass and steel. But today, something was different. Today, I was sitting on the wrong side of that desk. "Dad, you have to understand," Michael said, looking uncomfortable in what used to be my chair. "The board feels we need fresh perspectives, modern approaches. The company's future depends on it. I'm James Thompson, 65 years old, founder of Thompson Industries, the company I built from a small tech consulting firm into a billion-dollar enterprise. And my son, my own flesh and blood, was trying to push me into retirement." "Modern approaches," I repeated, tasting the words. "Like the Harrison Global deal you're so excited about." Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. He always had a tell when he was caught off guard, a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. "How did you hear about that?" "You think because I'm not CEO anymore, I don't keep my ears open. Harrison Global is planning a hostile takeover, son. They're using you to get inside information." "That's ridiculous," Michael scoffed. "William Harrison is my friend. We golf together. Our families vacation together." I pulled out my phone, opened an encrypted file, and placed it on his desk. William Harrison Sr. was my friend too. 30 years ago, before he tried the same move on Parker Electronics. His son's just following the family playbook. Michael scanned the documents, his face growing paler with each swipe. Internal memos, banking transactions, shell company registrations, all pointing to Harrison Global's carefully orchestrated plan to acquire Thompson Industries through a combination of market manipulation and insider information. "This can't be right," he muttered. "Will wouldn't." "The Harrisons have been perfecting this technique for 2 generations," I said. "They find successful family-owned companies, preferably ones with young CEOs eager to prove themselves. They make friends, build trust, then strike when the company's most vulnerable." "And when exactly would that be?" Michael asked, his voice carrying a defensive edge. "About 3 weeks from now, when our Q3 numbers show the impact of that failed Asian expansion you pushed through. The stock will dip just enough for them to start their move." Michael slumped in my old chair. His chair now. "How do you know all this?" "Because I taught William Harrison Sr. everything he knew about corporate takeovers. Back before he turned that knowledge against his friends." I leaned forward. "But I didn't teach him everything I know." Opening my briefcase, I extracted another file. This one contained details of an offshore account I'd established 20 years ago. $50 million, carefully accumulated and hidden, waiting for exactly this kind of emergency. "What's this?" Michael asked. "Insurance. Emergency funds that can be used to block their stock acquisition. Combined with the voting shares I still control through the family trust, it's enough to stop Harrison Global in its tracks." My son's expression shifted from shock to something else. Recognition, perhaps respect. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" "Would you have listened? You've spent the last year telling anyone who would listen that my methods are outdated, that I don't understand modern business." I allowed myself a small smile. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The silence that filled the office was heavy with unspoken words. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the sun setting behind the city skyline. How many sunsets had I watched from this office, planning, strategizing, building something I hoped would last generations? "The board meeting," Michael finally said. "Tomorrow morning. They're expecting me to announce your full retirement." "I know. Harrison Global's representatives will be there." "I know that too." Michael stood, walked to the window. For a moment, I saw myself at his age. Ambitious, confident, sometimes too confident. "What do we do?" I raised an eyebrow. I thought I was too old for this company. He turned, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy. Uncertainty, vulnerability, need. Dad, I need your help. Those words unlocked something in my chest. Not triumph, not vindication, but relief. Maybe even hope. Then let's talk about how we save this company. Together. For the next 3 hours, we worked like we hadn't in years. I shared everything I knew about Harrison Global's tactics, about the weaknesses in their strategy, about the network of loyal allies I'd maintained even after stepping down as CEO. The key, I explained, pointing to a complex chart of corporate relationships, is their financing. Harrison Global looks solid, but their acquisition fund is heavily leveraged. If we can force them to show their hand too early, the banks will get nervous, Michael finished. But how do we do that? Remember that outdated system of personal relationships I always emphasized. Those old-fashioned business lunches and handshake deals you wanted to modernize away. I pulled out my phone. Time to see if they still work. I made 3 calls that night. The first was to George Chen at First National Bank, who'd been my golf partner for 30 years. The second was to Sarah Martinez, now head of the SEC's Enforcement Division, who'd started her career as Thomson Industries legal intern. The third was to William Harrison Sr. himself, retired but still sharp as ever. "Billy," I said when he answered, using his old nickname. "We need to talk about your boy." The conversation that followed was brief but pointed. By the end, we had an understanding. The old guard looking out for the next generation, even when they thought they didn't need it. Michael watched these calls with growing amazement. "How long have you been preparing for something like this?" "Since the day you were born," I answered truthfully. A father's job is to protect his children, even from themselves sometimes. Morning came too quickly. The Thomson Industries boardroom filled with the usual suspects, board members, executives, and 3 representatives from Harrison Global, including William Harrison Jr. himself. He nodded to Michael with practiced friendship, but I caught the predatory gleam in his eyes. Michael stood to begin the meeting, but I raised my hand. "If you don't mind, son, I'd like to speak first." What followed was either the most important speech of my career or my final gift to my son, perhaps both. I laid out Harrison Global's takeover plan in detailed, devastating clarity. I revealed the offshore account and my intention to use it to block their stock acquisition. Then I played my final card. "And here," I said, placing a document on the table, "is a letter from William Harrison Sr. expressing his disappointment in his son's tactics and withdrawing Harrison Global's financing for this venture." The room erupted in chaos. William Jr. turned pale, then red, then stormed out with his team in tow. Board members buzzed with questions and congratulations. Through it all, Michael sat silent, watching me with new eyes. When the room finally cleared, he spoke. "You could have stopped this at any time. Why did you wait?" "Because some lessons can't be taught. They have to be learned." I sat beside him, feeling every one of my 65 years, but somehow lighter. "You needed to see for yourself why experience matters, why relationships matter, why the old ways sometimes survive for a reason. And the 50 million, you're just giving it to the company." "No," I smiled. "I'm giving it to you. To use wisely, I hope. To remember that true strength isn't in showing power, but in knowing when to hold it in reserve." Michael stood, walked around the table, and did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything I said, for trying to push you out. I know, son. I know." I hugged him back, feeling the years between us melt away. "Now, shall we talk about how to modernize the company without losing what made it strong in the first place?" He laughed, wiping his eyes. "Yeah, Dad, I'd like that." The aftermath of the Harrison Global incident rippled through the corporate world like wildfire. By noon, our stock had jumped 12% as word spread about how Thomson Industries had thwarted a hostile takeover attempt. But inside our offices, a more important transformation was taking place. Michael and I sat in his office, still strange to call it that, reviewing the company's current projects. The wall of screens displaying real-time data and market trends contrasted sharply with my old leather notebook, but somehow the combination felt right. "I still can't believe you maintained all these connections," Michael said, scrolling through my list of industry contacts. "Some of these people are legends in their fields." "People, not algorithms, son. That's what you've been missing." I tapped my notebook. Every name here represents a relationship built over decades. Trust earned through actions, not just transactions. Like Sarah Martinez at the SEC. I smiled, remembering the eager intern who had worked her way up to one of the most powerful positions in financial regulation. She still remembers how we helped put her through law school. Not the company. We, the Thompson family. Those personal touches matter. Michael nodded slowly, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. "Is that why you kept the employee education program even when the board wanted to cut it?" "Exactly. It wasn't about immediate ROI. It was about building loyalty, creating a network of people who remembered Thompson Industries as more than just a paycheck." Our conversation was interrupted by Jessica, Michael's assistant, rushing in with urgent news. "Sir, William Harrison Jr. is giving a press conference. You need to see this." The largest screen came to life, showing Harrison's face, tight with controlled anger. "While we respect Thompson Industries' decision to remain independent, serious questions must be asked about their financial practices, particularly regarding offshore accounts and—" I chuckled, causing both Michael and Jessica to look at me in surprise. "Dad?" Michael asked. "This isn't funny. He's trying to trigger an investigation." "No, he's trying to save face." I pulled out my phone. "And he's about to learn another lesson about the value of old relationships." I dialed a number from memory. "Marcus, James Thompson here. Remember that conversation we had about your nephew's startup?" "Yes, I think it's time we made that investment public. And maybe mention how Harrison Global tried to acquire it last year." Within an hour, tech blogs were buzzing with news about Thompson Industries' strategic investment in a promising AI security firm, one that Harrison Global had allegedly tried to strip and sell off. The narrative was shifting before our eyes. "That's how you do it," I explained to Michael. "Not by fighting accusations, but by changing the conversation. Your friend will never learn the subtle arts from his father." Michael leaned back, shaking his head. "All these years, I thought you were just resistant to change. But this is a whole different level of strategy. The principles never change, son. Only the tools." I gestured at his wall of screens. "Your modern analytics and real-time data. They're valuable. But they're still just tools. The real power is in knowing how and when to use them." As if to prove my point, another alert flashed across the screens. Harrison Global stock was dropping as investors questioned their acquisition strategies. Several major shareholders were calling for emergency board meetings. "They'll survive," I said, noting Michael's concerned expression. "William Sr. will step in before things get too bad. Sometimes a lesson needs to be expensive to be remembered." "Like my lesson?" Michael asked quietly. I met his eyes. "You tell me. What have you learned?" He stood, walking to the window where the city stretched out below, the same view I'd contemplated for decades. That I was arrogant. That I mistook innovation for improvement. He turned back to me. That I almost lost everything trying to prove I didn't need my father's wisdom. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "You know," I said carefully, "there's nothing wrong with wanting to make your own mark. But the strongest buildings keep their foundations even as they add new floors." Mixed metaphors, Dad. Hey, I'm old. I'm allowed. We both laughed, releasing weeks of tension. Then Michael's expression turned serious again. "The board will want answers about the offshore account." "The board will get them. Every transaction, every decision, all properly documented. I may be old-fashioned, but I've always played by the rules. I patted my notebook. It's all in here, plus backups in places only I know about. Another lesson. Always keep clean books, but keep them where you can control access. And the employee education program. What about it? I'd want to expand it. Not just college support, but technical training, professional development, the works. Michael's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Combine your relationship building with modern skills development. I felt a surge of pride. Finally, he was getting it. Now you're thinking like a Thompson. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings, calls, and strategic planning. We met with the board, explaining both the Harrison situation and our plans for the future. The combination of my established relationships and Michael's technological vision painted a compelling picture. By evening, we were both exhausted but satisfied. The company was secure, our partnership reinforced, and a new path forward was taking shape. Join me for dinner? Michael asked as we finished the last meeting. Diana and the kids have been asking about you. I hesitated. You sure? Family dinner with the old man might not fit your modern image. He grabbed his coat, shaking his head. Dad, stop. I get it. I really do. The company needs both of us, your wisdom and my innovation, working together. Over dinner at Michael's home, watching him with his wife and children, I saw the future of Thompson Industries more clearly than ever. My granddaughter Sophie, barely 7, showed me her coding project with the same enthusiasm I'd once had for circuit boards. Her brother Tommy, 10, was already asking questions about the stock market. You know, Michael said as we shared a scotch after the kids were in bed, I never thanked you properly. Not just for saving the company, but for letting me make my own mistakes. That's what fathers do, I replied. We stand back when we have to, step in when we must, and hope our children learn the difference. I'd like you to come back to the office, he said suddenly. Not as CEO, but as Chairman Emeritus, Special Advisor. Whatever title you want. We need you. Dad, I need you. Looking at my son in that moment, I saw both the boy who used to play under my desk and the man who would carry our legacy forward. On one condition, I said. Name it. We do this as partners. Equal voices. Your innovation, my experience. Deal? Michael extended his hand, then pulled it back with a smile. No, not like that. He hugged me instead. Deal, Dad, deal. As I drove home that night, I thought about cycles and changes, about wisdom and progress. The city skyline glittered with the same lights I'd watched grow for 40 years, but now they seemed to shine with new purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new lessons for both father and son. But tonight, we'd laid a foundation stronger than any offshore account or corporate strategy. We had rebuilt trust, and that, as I had always known, was the most valuable asset of all. 3 months after the Harrison Global incident, Thompson Industries had transformed in ways neither Michael nor I could have predicted. The marriage of old-school business relationships and cutting-edge technology was creating something entirely new, and the market was noticing. I sat in my new office, adjacent to Michael's, reviewing quarterly reports when Sophie Chen, our Chief Technology Officer, knocked on my door. Mr. Thompson, you were right, she said, tablet in hand. Those personal connections you mentioned, they just helped us land the Anderson contract. The Anderson Group had been a potential client for years, resistant to all our modern pitches and presentations, until I suggested a different approach. Let me guess. I smiled. You had lunch with Thomas Anderson's daughter. Sophie nodded. At that old steakhouse you recommended. She mentioned how her father still talks about playing baseball with you in college. 2 hours later, we had a signed preliminary agreement. Sometimes the shortest path to a deal runs through memory lane. I gestured for her to sit. But I'm guessing that's not why you're here. No. She pulled up a complex diagram on her tablet. It's about the new integrated system Michael wants to implement, the one combining your relationship database with our AI analytics. Yes, Michael's pet project, an attempt to quantify and digitize 40 years of business relationships and instincts. My son's way of ensuring the company wouldn't lose my knowledge when I eventually retired for real. Let me guess again, I said. The AI can't make sense of my notes. Sir, with all due respect, your notebook system is... She searched for a diplomatic word. Archaic? Outdated? Choose your adjective, Sophie. I've heard them all. She laughed. Unique. The AI can process the data, but it can't understand the context. The human element is missing. I opened my leather notebook, its pages filled with decades of observations, not just about business deals, but about people. Children's names, hobbies, personal struggles, dreams. That's because business isn't just numbers and data, I explained. Take Thomas Anderson. The AI might show his company's financials, market position, potential synergies. But it won't tell you that his grandson has autism, that he's passionate about special education, that every major decision he makes considers its impact on families like his. Sophie's eyes widened with understanding. That's why you insisted our proposal include the special needs accessibility features. Exactly. Not because it affected the bottom line, but because it showed we understood what matters to him personally. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office as Sophie and I worked on bridging the gap between my old world approach and the new technology. We were interrupted by Michael bursting in, his face flushed with excitement. Dad, remember that hint you dropped about Martinez Holdings looking to expand? I nodded. Sarah Martinez's brother ran a successful regional distribution company. Well, I combined your intel with our predictive analytics. Look at this. He pulled up a holographic display showing an intricate web of business relationships, market trends, and opportunity vectors. At the center was a potential merger that could double our distribution capacity. Not bad, I admitted. But have you considered the human factor? Michael's grin widened. Already did. Called Junior Martinez this morning. Mentioned that Little League game where you coached his son. Had lunch scheduled before I hung up. Pride swelled in my chest. He was learning. The old man would love to see his company merge with ours, Michael continued. Says he trusts the Thompson name. Something about a handshake deal you honored 20 years ago when everyone else would have backed out. I remember. I turned to Sophie. Add that to your AI parameters, the value of a kept promise. The next few hours were a masterclass in blending traditions with technology. Sophie's team worked on quantifying the intangibles of business relationships, while Michael and I strategized the Martinez merger. You know what amazes me? Michael said as we reviewed the details. How many of these opportunities were there all along, hidden in your notebooks? We just needed the right tools to leverage them. And the right perspective to see them, I added. Technology without wisdom is like a map without a compass. By evening, word of the potential Martinez merger had leaked to the market. Our stock jumped 8% in after-hours trading. The business news channels were buzzing with analysis of Thompson Industries' revolutionary integration of traditional business values and cutting-edge technology. I found myself in the company gym late that night, using the treadmill installed at Michael's insistence. Dad, stress management is part of modern business. Looking out over the city, I reflected on how much had changed, and how much remained constant. My phone buzzed. A message from William Harrison Sr. Jim, you old fox. Heard about Martinez. Junior tried to pitch me the same deal last year. Should have known you had your eye on it. Golf next week? I smiled, typing back. Only if you're ready to lose again, Billy. Another buzz, this time from Sophie. Integration progressing. Your notebook entries are gold mines, but we still need you to explain the stories behind them. And finally, a message from Michael. Dad, dinner tomorrow. Need your advice on something. And Sophie wants to interview you for the relationship database project. Standing there, surrounded by the steel and glass of the modern office, but holding my weathered leather notebook, I understood something profound. The real legacy of Thomson Industries wasn't in its buildings or bank accounts or even its technology. It was in the stories, the relationships, the trust built over generations. My son had taught me that progress wasn't the enemy of tradition, and I taught him that innovation worked best when rooted in proven principles. Together, we were writing a new chapter in the company's history, one that honored the past while embracing the future. The next morning, I arrived early to find Michael already in his office, surrounded by holographic displays, but also, surprisingly, writing in a leather notebook similar to mine. "Don't say it," he warned with a smile. "Wouldn't dream of it." I sat down, pulling out my own notebook. "So, about the Martinez merger." "Actually," he interrupted, "I wanted to ask about something else first." He opened his notebook. "Tell me about the Anderson baseball game. The real story. The one the AI can't quantify." And so, as the sun rose over the city we both helped build, I shared another lesson about business, about life, about the delicate art of balancing progress with principle. Because sometimes the most valuable updates don't require any technology at all. 1 year after the day my son tried to push me into retirement, I stood at the podium during Thomson Industries' annual shareholders meeting. The auditorium was packed, not just with investors, but with faces I'd known for decades, employees, partners, friends who'd become family. When I started this company 40 years ago, I began. We measured success in dollars and cents. Today, we measure it in relationships and trust, enhanced by technology, but rooted in human connection. The screens behind me displayed our achievements. Stock price up 45%, the successful Martinez merger, expansion into 3 new markets. But more importantly, they showed images of our extended Thomson Industries family, the scholarship recipients, the promoted employees, the lives we touched. Michael sat in the front row, his leather notebook open, a sight that still made me smile. Beside him, Sophie Chen was running our new relationship intelligence platform, the system that had successfully merged my old world wisdom with cutting-edge AI. Last year, someone suggested I was too old for this company. I continued, catching Michael's eye. He grinned, acknowledging the reference. They were half right. I was too old to run it alone, but too experienced to step away completely. The answer, as in most things in life, lay in balance. I gestured to the success metrics on display. These numbers tell a story, but not the whole story. The whole story is in the people. In Thomas Anderson's grandson, now heading our accessibility initiative. In Sarah Martinez's brother, whose merger with us created jobs for 1,000 families. In William Harrison Jr., who recently called to apologize and seek mentorship. That last bit caused a stir. The reconciliation with Harrison Global had been unexpected, but it proved another of my old principles. In business, today's adversary could be tomorrow's ally. Thomson Industries isn't just adapting to the future, I said. We're creating it. A future where artificial intelligence meets emotional intelligence, where digital transformation is guided by human wisdom, where success is measured not just in profits, but in promises kept. Michael stood then, joining me at the podium. We had planned this moment carefully. A year ago, he said, "I thought modernization meant discarding the old ways. I was wrong. True innovation means building on our foundations, not destroying them." Which is why today, we're announcing the Thomson Legacy Initiative. The screens shifted to show our newest project, a comprehensive program combining business education, relationship building, and technological innovation. My old notebook system, digitized but not diminished, would become a teaching tool for the next generation of business leaders. My father taught me that business is about more than transactions. Michael continued. It's about trust, integrity, and the courage to admit when you're wrong. The Legacy Initiative will ensure these lessons aren't lost as we grow. I watched the audience react, seeing understanding dawn on faces young and old. This wasn't just about preserving the past or embracing the future. It was about bridging them. After the meeting, Michael and I stood on the office balcony, sharing a quiet moment as the sun set. You know, he said, a year ago, I thought I was saving the company from becoming obsolete. Instead, the company saved me from making the biggest mistake of my career. That's what family businesses do, I replied. They teach us, humble us, make us better than we were. He pulled out his notebook, not a concession to my old ways anymore, but a symbol of what we built together. Want to hear my latest entry? Always. Lesson from Dad. The most valuable upgrades aren't in our systems, but in ourselves. I smiled, feeling the weight of years and wisdom, of mistakes made and lessons learned. Not bad, but you forgot one thing. What's that? The best innovations come from knowing which traditions to keep. We stood there, father and son, old and new, watching our city twinkle to life as darkness fell. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new lessons for us both. But now we face them together, stronger for our differences, wiser for our struggles. Because in the end, that's what the Thompson legacy was really about. Not just building a business, but building bridges. Between generations, between traditions and innovations, between the wisdom of experience and the courage to change. And that, as my father once told me, and I now told my son, was the greatest success of all.